Welcome back to Painted Pages. We are excited to present Chapter 4 of Odyssey, a spiritual journey of a woman who awakens to a much grander and more fascinating universe than she ever imagined. Chapter 4, Breakfast of Truths. Not hearing from Azur for the rest of the week made me extremely anxious. I wanted to talk to Anne about the events that had unfolded with him at the beach, but my worries about her reaction held me back. I was so close to calling him countless times. Nevertheless, the demands of work and the captivating allure of San Francisco successfully diverted my attention, offering a much-needed distraction. It turned out my mother was right. The city truly left me in awe. The training kept me more occupied than I could have anticipated. It was about a new accounting tool that would automate vendor payments and customer receivables, which lasted until 5 every day. Fortunately for me, Anne, too, fell in love with the city, evidently relishing the sights and finding enjoyment in the solitude of her own company. We made a habit of meeting at different restaurants in different parts of the city every evening at 6. As much as we were having a great time, my gaze wandered the streets and the restaurants, hoping to see Azur coming to join us at any moment. Anne must have sensed my feelings because she kept reminding me of his visit to Atlanta. She couldn't understand my obsession with him as she hadn't witnessed our peculiar conversation at the beach. I did everything in my power to keep myself together by losing myself in training during the day and the charms of San Francisco in the evenings. We returned to Atlanta on Friday, right before midnight. The unsettling feeling of reaching for the doorknob and knowing nothing was waiting for me on the other side, but darkness was disturbing. Anxious to brighten my vacant apartment, I hurriedly reached for the light switch. Dragging my heavy suitcase, I made my way to the bedroom, too exhausted to unpack. Through the bedroom window, the faint glow of the outside lights surrounding the lake cast a gentle illumination. My gaze shifted to the lake, which once again brought memories of Azur. The sight of the naked willow tree leaning towards the lake seemed to mirror its own quest for answers. "He's just a worthless piece of shit," I muttered under my breath. To him, it was all just a game. There was no way he would come to Atlanta. I left the curtain open, allowing the streetlights to fill my bedroom. The thought of being surrounded by complete darkness felt suffocating. Seeking solace, I nestled myself in the embrace of my bed, hoping for a dreamless slumber that would give me a break from the thoughts plaguing my mind. The loud sound of my phone by my nightstand woke me up, and I had to halt for a second, despite the buzzing of my cell, to remember I was in my bedroom, not in a hotel room. When it all came back to me, I hurriedly reached for my phone. "Hello?"
Good morning, Lara.
"Azur?" I asked, to my surprise. My heart lurched frantically at the sound of his voice.
So you haven't forgotten my name, huh?
I could hear the humor in his voice. How could I? Though I couldn't grasp the fact that I was on the phone with him. "What time is it?" I asked.
It is around 7.
"Do you ever sleep?"
I woke you up again, did I? Sometimes I lose my concept of time. I've arrived in Atlanta this morning and wanted to see if you're up for breakfast with me.
Now?
When you're ready. I'll meet you at the breakfast place by Midtown in half an hour or an hour. Make sure to dry your hair. It's cold outside.
I had more pressing issues than the weather or the conditions of my hair. The breakfast place he suggested was suspiciously close to my house. "Do you know where I live?" I had never told him where I lived.
If I say yes, would you be concerned?
I could sense his own disquiet in his voice when he asked the question. "I don't know what to think about you anymore, Azur. You've made it pretty clear you know everything about me." My answer would be no. I'm already concerned about you. So no, your knowing my address wouldn't increase my concern level any higher than it already is.
All right, that's a fair answer. Then I have to be honest with you. Yes, I know where you live.
I closed my eyes tightly and let out a deep breath. "Why don't you come over to my place in an hour? I need an hour to wake up, and I don't think I can handle going to a public place with you right now." I couldn't believe what I had proposed, but I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about and how I would handle what he had to say, so I wanted to be in an environment that I was most familiar and comfortable with.
I'll see you at 8 and I'll bring the breakfast.
"Can you get me some donuts? I need my sugar rush in the morning."
You know white sugar and wheat will kill you.
I've just invited the most mysterious man on the planet to my house, and who knows what kind of powers he possesses. Dying from eating donuts is the least of my worries right now. He laughed at my comment, assured me again that he would be at my place in an hour, and we hung up. I sat for a few minutes and stared at my phone, wondering if my conversation with him was real. I needed a shower to be certain I wasn't asleep. I got out of bed and walked to the bathroom, holding onto the phone tightly to reassure myself I wasn't imagining. The shower didn't help. The more awake I was, the more anxious I became. I had to do something to keep myself calm. I rushed to the living room, still in my towel. I had no clue what shape my living room was in, but it wasn't as bad as my bedroom was. I quickly fixed the throw and the pillows on the sofa, wiped the dust off the coffee table with the tip of my towel, and hurried back to my bedroom. My bedroom was a mess. The suitcase was sitting in the corner, not yet unpacked. The clothes I wore yesterday were lying on the floor, and there were more clothes from last week that I'd thought I'd take to San Francisco with me, piled on the chair next to the dresser. I wasn't planning on inviting him into my bedroom, but cleaning it up would give me something to do to pass the time and help me calm down a little. My bedroom was spotless in 20 minutes. I dressed in a rush, putting on my khaki pants and orange knit V-neck sweater. I tied back my hair in a messy bun, letting a few curls hang loose. With a mere 6 minutes left before his arrival, despite my heightened state of alertness and the knowledge that caffeine wouldn't offer much assistance, I decided to brew a pot of coffee. I hoped the comforting routine of preparing it and the aroma would help me to soothe my nerves. The doorbell rang. How the hell did he go through the security gate without calling me? I laughed at my own thought nervously. Was this really what I should be worried about right now? I took a deep breath before reaching up for the doorknob and found the courage to open the door. There he was. He was looking at me with those piercing eyes. The light blue shirt he was wearing brought out the color in his eyes. They were glowing in turquoise. I would never get used to his beauty.
Hi.
He said, smiling. I forced myself to smile at him briefly. I couldn't say anything but stepped aside to let him in. He lifted the shopping bags he was holding.
Where would you like me to put these?
I pointed at the kitchen. I still couldn't say a word, but followed him. He placed the bags on the counter, turned around, and gave me a hug, which I wasn't expecting. I was lost in his arms again and felt safe and comfortable. When he let me go, I finally managed to say, "Hi,"
I've got your donuts, some fruit salad, bagels, and cream cheese.
he replied. He was trying to make me feel relaxed and normal, but it wasn't working. Every cell in my body was so tense I kept fumbling. I couldn't think clearly. "Thank you," I said. "Would you like to have some coffee?" I added, not knowing what else to say.
I'll have some fruit.
We stood in the middle of the kitchen, observing each other nervously. I decided to set the table, which would give me time to sort out my thoughts and avoid his stares. "Please, have a seat while I set the table." I awkwardly pointed at the sofa in the living room. He shook his head.
I'll help.
"Sure. There should be a white tablecloth in the top drawer of that cabinet by the dining table," I said, looking in that direction. He headed to the dining area. "You probably already knew where it is anyway," I murmured to myself. I didn't think he heard me. I brought everything else to the table and sat across from him. He served himself some fruit, but he didn't seem to be interested in the food. I took a bite from my donut and a sip from my coffee. It felt good, and the sugar rush gave me confidence. "It feels strange to see you in my apartment," I started the conversation. He smiled, but I could see he was lost in his thoughts. "You look a little worried," I continued.
I was so forward with you the last time. I don't want to scare you off again. I was thinking of how to start the conversation so it would feel comfortable for both of us.
"You can start by explaining how you know so much about me," I suggested the obvious.
Okay, I'll start with that. But I need you to be very open-minded. Before you start thinking I'm speaking nonsense, I want you to give me a chance to explain myself. Would you promise me that?
"I'll try."
I'll ask you a few questions, although I know the answers already.
He winked at me and smiled.
But I still need to hear them from you.
I stared at him suspiciously but said, "Okay."
What is your belief system?
About what? I wasn't sure I understood his question.
About God.
He said casually. I was surprised by the question. I had never discussed my belief system with anyone before. It was too personal and complicated for me. I narrowed my eyes and sat back in the chair, implying that his question didn't have any relevance.
It is important. Just for this purpose. Please, leave your logic aside and answer my question.
He leaned forward to be closer, resting his hand on his chin and looking at me intensely. I couldn't resist his beautiful eyes again. They were truly mesmerizing. I sighed. I believe in God. At least I think I do, I said, giving in, but I wasn't satisfied with my answer, so I continued. Although I don't really understand what God is, what his position is in this world, or what kind of pleasure he receives from the agony of his subjects. But I've always been told that there is a God, and that I shouldn't be questioning it. My father had left us in the name of his so-called God, and his family thought that their God didn't approve of us. My mother died while praying to her God under potent sedatives to lessen her pain. Either way, God ended up taking away my loved ones. It was my father's choice to leave us, so I didn't blame God so much for what my father did. He could have said no to his call, but he chose to listen. However, when it came to my mother, God was the only one to blame. She didn't deserve to die at the age of 48. She was supposed to have a long life ahead of her. I knew in my heart that she didn't want to leave me all alone. She didn't want to die, but she wasn't given any choice. The truth was, I was angry with God. I wanted to punish him by not believing in him, but when you want to condemn something, it means you accept its existence.
How about reincarnation? Do you believe in it?
He asked, without commenting on my first answer. I paused. It was another question I wasn't expecting. I had to think. I could see on his face that he thought I was resisting again, but before he could make any comment, I raised my hand to stop him. I'm thinking, okay? I'll answer it. He nodded and kept staring at me, waiting for my answer. It's not something I've given much thought to, but yes, I've considered it, I said finally. It makes sense to me. We shouldn't have only one shot at life. We're born into different circumstances, and it's not fair that life seems to be so easy for some and such a struggle for others from the day they're born. I paused for a second, thought about God again, thought about what he meant to me. However, having said that, I don't think God knows anything about justice. I don't think he cares what's fair, so maybe reincarnation is only something humans want to believe in so they can make some sense out of the nonsense in life. Then I recalled my recurring dreams. They were my warnings, weren't they? At the end, we'll all vanish forever. What's the point of believing in a higher power or having another chance in life anyway? It was my honest opinion. I chuckled uncomfortably and shrugged my shoulders to cover my discomfort on the subject. He stared at me with that strange expression. Pity? But he only nodded at my responses and continued.
How about psychic powers? Have you encountered people who could read the future or knew important milestones or events in your life?
I raised an eyebrow. Was the answer his psychic powers? Is that how he knew my address, or did he simply Google it?
Laura, please do not judge my questions or try to make sense of them. I need you to go with it, and I promise you'll see the relevance soon.
You probably know the answer. I was about to lose my patience.
I want to hear it from you.
He insisted. I took a deep breath again and gave in. I've visited psychics a couple of times, and once it was with my mother. I was about 14 then. My mother had never been lucky with the men in her life. She dated a few after my father left, but nobody really captured her heart, and she was extra cautious before she introduced me to any of them. She finally dated a man she thought she could fall for, and she even introduced me to him. The psychic told her she saw a wedding ring on his finger. My mother didn't want to believe it, but soon enough, she found out he was married. The second time I went, it was with Anne. We were in college, I said. We had gone for fun. Anne wanted to know if she would end up with Jack, but I didn't have any specific questions or expectations for my own life. It was a male psychic. He somehow knew I'd been raised by my mother only, and he promised I'd have a bright future and a good job. When he said I would meet a good man, I decided to disregard his comments altogether. They were more accurate about the past, but not so much about the future. I said.
Good observation.
Azur approved.
Future is never written on a solid rock. It may always change. Have you ever thought about how psychics know the things they say, even if they're not totally correct?
I don't know. Lucky guess? I shrugged. I asked once. The man told me that he would receive visions, like in a dream state, and interpret them. I've never tried to understand it or had much interest in the subject.
This will be my last question, so please bear with me, and please be open-minded.
He reminded me again.
Have you ever considered that there might be other civilizations across the universe who are more evolved than the humans here on Earth?
I cleared my throat and looked him in the eye. Should I expect his eyes to turn dark green, with the pupils turning into thin lines, like the alien in the movies right before he peels his mask off? But Azur looked too beautiful and innocent to be doing any of that. I wasn't scared of him. The energy in the room didn't shift at all. I still felt peace in his presence even after his confession. Or was it a confession? You mean aliens? Do I think they exist? Are you one? He raised an eyebrow. I knew I wasn't allowed to ask any questions until I answered his. I sighed and continued. Do I ever think that ETs exist? I don't know. I like sci-fi movies, but again, I've never given too much thought to it. I've never really cared if they existed or not, as long as they don't bother me. Are you one? I repeated my question. Since I had answered him, I had every right to find out. I tried to remain calm. I didn't know how to react. I had never had psychic powers, but deep inside, I knew the answer. He directed his attention to the coffee cup in front of me. The brown liquid started moving in the air like a snake and made a heart shape. I didn't react this time. As silly as it may sound, all I could think of was if he lost control of the liquid, how it would make a stain on the tablecloth or on my clothes, and how it was pretty hot. The coffee didn't spill. The heart shape became a straight line, twirled around, and as if it were being poured from a coffee pot, it poured back into my cup. I didn't realize I wasn't breathing, but as soon as he finished his show, I remembered to take a breath. I guess you are, I answered my own question. I was unaware that I was shaking my left leg under the dinner table, causing the whole table to shake. He held the table to steady it. I stopped, realizing what I was doing.
Okay, hear me out, Lara. The reason I've asked you all these questions was to make you understand your own belief system. It is vague. You're not the spiritual type, but you do believe in God, in reincarnation, and in the possibility of the existence of other beings on other planets. So I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that the God that you believe in created your race, and the whole planet wouldn't have any issue with creating other races on other planets all around the universe, right?
I nodded uncomprehendingly.
And they don't always have to be scary looking, the way most of the Hollywood movies show them. Although I think this is a matter of perception. The human race might look very scary to other races on the other side of the universe.
I looked at him blankly while also wondering how someone as beautiful as he was could look scary to anyone, anywhere in the universe.
Well, here we go. As you've guessed, I'm not from this planet. I'm a Pleiadian, from a small cluster of stars called the Pleiades, or as some call it, the Seven Sisters. I'm not going to go into details, but we share the same genes with you, so we're humans as well, which makes it easy for us to blend in.
I disagreed with him that they blended in, but I kept my opinion to myself.
There are also other species from other planets here on Earth, and they're all good-natured. They only want to help with the transition that the Earth has been going through. We promote peace, and we protect Earth from some interdimensional beings occasionally, but mainly we protect the Earth from itself and its inhabitants.
He paused for a second. He wanted to see if I had any questions for him, but my brain wasn't functioning well. I kept staring at him absent-mindedly, so he continued again.
Don't ever believe those abduction stories. They're nothing but staged events conducted by some dark forces on Earth.
Under other circumstances, I would have questioned his last remark, but I was as dumb as a 6-year-old who's being explained of the rocket science. The confusion in my eyes must have given him the sign not to linger on the abduction issue. He changed the topic swiftly and said,
We're thousands of years ahead of you, technologically and spiritually, and this is how I know so much about you. You gave me your permission to access your Akashic records.
Resting my elbow on the table, I pressed my hand on my mouth as if I were keeping the words from spilling out. I had to release a big sigh and take a breath again to talk. I put both hands on my lap and narrowed my eyes. I don't remember giving you any authorization on anything about me, and I have no clue whatsoever what the Schick records are. I made my first rational comment at last. He scratched the side of his neck awkwardly, looking up at me through his beautiful dark eyelashes.
It is called Akashic Records,
he said, correcting me. Obviously, I didn't care what it was called, and I still stared at him with questioning eyes. He explained further.
You can think of it as a database that contains the information of the entire cosmos. Information on each being, each planet, solar system, galaxy, everything. Remember your psychic readings? They were always pretty accurate about your past, but not so much about the future. Some humans on your planet also have the ability to tap into Akashic records. Some do it through other entities. Some do it directly, but not to the extent I can. Or at least they don't have the consciousness to grasp the data they receive. I can download every single detail about your life once I'm allowed. And it wasn't your mind that gave me permission. It was your soul. Your higher self, your true self, permitted me. And this is how I knew who you were.
When did I do that? I asked skeptically.
When I found your ring and brought it to you in San Francisco, you looked me in the eye. I didn't intend to do what I did, but your higher self communicated to me, opened your Akashic records, and invited me in. You must have known who I was, and I immediately recognized you as well.
His eyes were fixed on me. We knew each other? I was still trying to make some sense out of our conversation.
Yes, we did. We're soulmates, and I promised to help you with your Earth experience if you got stuck here.
My Earth experience? I repeated. He nodded.
You said you had considered reincarnation. You ought to believe in it. We've had many lives together, but not on planet Earth. I've never had the courage, or need, to live on Earth as a human being from the third dimension. Well, I'm a human in many ways, but I'm also a being of the fifth dimension, and it makes a big difference.
Maybe God was not unjust after all. He paused again to give me some time to digest what he had said and what I had to say, but he continued when I kept my thoughts to myself while I maintained my silence.
You lived in the fifth dimension and in other higher dimensions. We all did. But you wanted to have the experience of the Earth. I wanted to stay behind to help you in case you needed me. As a human of the third dimension, you have no recollection of what your previous lives were about, why you are here, or what you are. I'm here to help you remember.
Both of his hands were resting on the table, grabbing the plate in front of him, and he looked stiff. I could tell he was making every effort to make me understand. It took me a while to process his words. He patiently waited for my response. I've considered reincarnation, but I never thought there'd be more than a couple life experiences, I muttered in a low voice. I didn't even understand my own belief system. So, what am I? I asked, trying to make some sense out of his unbelievable explanation. He sighed with relief that I was making an effort.
You're an old soul, Lara. There is really no time or space in reality. Everything you experience is a projection of your higher self, or you may think of it as a dream state. But if I have to measure your life experience based on Earth time, you're more than 6 billion years old. You and I are the same age. We were created from the same substance and the same breath. I know it's hard for you to grasp the meaning of all of this right now, but what I'm telling you is already familiar to many people on Earth. They're the awakened ones. Some are old souls like you, some even older. But their experiences from their previous lives help them understand how the universe works.
No matter what he had said so far or what kind of show he put on, I still needed some other proof to believe that what he had been telling me was the truth. Tell me something about me that only I know, nobody else, I said. Well, it has to be from this life since I don't remember the others. I leaned back in the chair, my fingers curled inwards, my nails pinching on my palm as a reminder that my conversation with him was real. It was hard to grasp his words. If this had been a movie, I would have despised the girl for not believing the beautiful knight who had come to rescue her. I would have thought how stupid she was not to take his hand sooner. But it was a real-life scenario. It was my life, and I had every right to doubt him. He shook his head, narrowing his eyes.
I don't want to upset you, Lara, The things you haven't told anybody are the things that upset you the most and that make you feel guilty about yourself, even though it was out of your control. That is why you chose not to share them with anyone.
I don't care. Tell me something I've never ever shared with anyone. I repeated myself anxiously. I could see the sadness on his face. He didn't want to do this, but he went on.
When your father left you and your mother, you thought it was your fault he left. You thought you weren't good enough as a daughter. You wrote a letter to him. It was an apology letter for your behavior. You promised him you would be good if he came back. The following day, you got rid of the letter and never mentioned it to anyone.
He was avoiding my gaze and looking down. I was in tears. My father had come to the U.S. from Turkey to earn his master's degree, and he met my mother, who was at the same college. They got married after they both graduated. Eventually, cultural and religious differences tore them apart. I was only 9 years old when he left for good. From a child's perspective, I thought he was only sad, that he must have been missing his family in Turkey, and that we were never good enough to keep him happy. Azur looked up to meet my eyes again.
I'm sorry.
He said with genuine concern.
I didn't mean to upset you.
No, it's okay. I should have expected this was coming. You warned me. I reached for the napkin and blew my nose. Why do you think I need help? I asked, still sniffling.
Earth is a school, Lara.
I loved hearing my name in his soothing voice. I was distracted for a second, but gathered my attention immediately.
And it is a great school. The knowledge you gain here is not available in any other place in the universe. That is why you chose Earth. If you graduate, you'll be regarded as if you're holding a diploma from a prestigious university. However, Earth is also the hardest planet to live, and to tell you the truth, it is a jungle. You've been here for about 10,000 years, and if you fail, you might end up spending another 10,000 years in the third dimension.
Is it a bad thing if I have to stay for another 10,000 years? I asked, not understanding the consequences. His eyes became gloomy.
I don't want to wait for another 10,000 years to be with you again.
Oh. I was taken aback by his confession. I didn't know what else to say. He was too beautiful to be true, and I couldn't understand his longing for someone like me.
These are critical times on Earth, Lara. How you react will determine whether you fail or pass. Earth is reaching the end of one of its cycles. It has gone through many cycles throughout its lifetime. There were many societies living on Earth before, and some were much more evolved than today's humans. They all disappeared eventually, and new ones replaced them. However, this time it will be different, very different. We're expecting Earth to ascend to the fifth dimension with its inhabitants who can hold the higher frequencies. However, some will still fail. Those who fail will either start over on Earth in another reality within the third dimension, or move on to other planets at a lower frequency. Either way, if you fail, I'll completely lose track of you.
He looked down again, avoiding my stare. Am I failing? Why am I failing? I'm a good person, I mumbled, frowning at him.
You have a strong ego, Lara, and not much compassion for humanity, which makes you operate at low frequencies. You like holding onto your grudges and may be very judgmental and unforgiving. You live your life with many fears, but avoid facing them.
His voice was unexpectedly harsher than usual to make his point. Apparently, he didn't think very highly of me, and I wasn't ready to hear my long list of glitches. How come you still want to help me and be with me if I possess all the wrong qualities? I was angry about his opinion of me, although I knew he was only being honest.
Because this is not who you really are. Your ego is not you.
He said in a more soothing tone that was filled with passion.
And I'm here to help you remember your true self.
I stared at him blankly. It was probably obvious on my face that I couldn't follow what he meant. My true self?
Yes, your true self. Your higher self. Your God self, whatever you're comfortable calling it. The real issue is that you don't see yourself as part of the Creator. You think God is a different entity outside of you. You must understand that you are not His subject. You are part of Him, His child. Do you think you're less human than your mother or father?
I nodded, agreeing with his comment about me being a human.
Exactly.
He approved eagerly.
The same logic applies here too. If you accept that you are a child of God, you should accept that you're God also. You carry every single quality it has. But when you think of God as a being outside of you, all you do is give your power away. Right now, You have no control over your life because you don't see yourself as part of the creator, but as a victim. Believe it or not, you create your own life. Your thoughts, your words, and your actions shape your reality, and they also shape many other lives to come. There is no force outside of you deciding on your behalf.
How could I create my own life? I rejected his explanation. It didn't make any sense. I don't think any child asks for a father who would abandon his family. And this is only my life. How about other children who are born into circumstances that would give them no chance in life? Most of them didn't even have time to think or say anything to create any reality.
Because humans usually create out of fear, not realizing that they have the power of the creator, and they assume the worst scenario for themselves. Plus, you're looking at it from the perspective that humans only have one lifetime, that reincarnation does not exist. These children will get many other shots in other lives. It's also their learning process. There are so many reasons why they are born into those circumstances, and sometimes the reason could simply be that they're sacrificing themselves to teach a lesson to humanity. They may want to create compassion in the hearts of others. Your previous lives play an important role in your fate in this life as well, and you had your own reasons why you chose your father to play the role. It was a mutual agreement.
It was hard for me to grasp his words, but I didn't say anything, so he continued.
The Earth is the only planet that carries heavy energy, causing its inhabitants to completely forget not only their previous lives, but also who they really are. It's as if you live in a circle of thick walls, one inside the other. The inner circle is your mind, representing your ego. The middle circle is your subconscious, working as a search engine or a file cabinet, so to speak. It holds all the memories from your current life and your previous lives, but it never reveals them to you completely. And the last one supports the collective consciousness of all humanity, imposing ideas like you need to get old or die after a certain age.
Are we not supposed to get old?
No, you are not. It's the collective belief of this planet that you should.
I couldn't process his words. My mind blank, not knowing how to react to his revelation, I took a sip from my coffee to digest what he had just said. It wasn't warm anymore. I decided to serve myself some fruit. He paused until I was done. Please continue, I said, biting a slice of green apple.
Let's say somebody slaps you in the face. The action happens in the smaller circle. Subconsciously, you go to your search engine, the circle in the middle, and look for similar actions. It goes through all your other life experiences and usually tells you to slap the person back. As long as you give the reaction that your search engine suggests, you'll always stay within the walls, in the smaller circle dominated by your ego, and you'll always have people slapping you because you chose to stay in the same frequency. The challenge of life, and the purpose of it, is to be able to go beyond those walls.
What's beyond the walls? I asked, swallowing the last piece of the apple.
Beyond the walls, you access your God self, your higher self, the universe, and you see your unlimited possibilities. You see the bigger picture, where you are the creator of your own destiny.
How do I do it? It all sounded nice and empowering, but I didn't think it would be easy to break through them.
There are two things you must master. The first one is unconditional forgiveness and love. When somebody slaps you, stop and think before you take action. But not with your brain, which is dominated by your ego. Think with your heart. Try to see God in this person's eyes and know that he only slapped you out of his own ego. He too lives in the same circle, unaware of his true identity. Then you'll be able to forgive him.
I almost laughed at his answer. It must have been easy for him to say, as he was only here to observe. He didn't have to live the experience firsthand. Yeah, sure. Next time if I meet someone like Hitler, I'll praise him for being a good soul, I said sarcastically.
Hitler had the mind of a reptile. He was affected by many external forces. I know it is not easy to forgive such an entity. However, forgiving him wouldn't impact his karma or his fate, but it will impact those who do forgive him. It will reduce the burden on their shoulders. Most of Hitler's victims are already incarnated on the earth again, but they keep creating similar traumas in their new lives because they have never overcome the horror they experienced during the genocide. They're still energetically linked to their experience. They chose to stay in victim consciousness, and when you have victim consciousness, you always attract predators.
He stared into my eyes, making sure I was listening. I nodded to assure him I was with him.
You must understand that everything is energy, Lara. Everything. You, me, your thoughts, your words, your feelings, everything. I will repeat this to you many times over. When you condemn someone or some event or hate someone for his behavior, you become not only energetically attached to the person or event, but also you feed the situation with your negative energy. That is why there has always been slavery, wars, human trafficking, and torture on the earth. Even people with the best intentions contribute to these horrific events without being aware of it. Humans always choose sides. You choose innocent kids over psychopathic adults or victims of wars over terrorist groups or governments. You feel sorry for one while hating the other. You don't realize that you create an energy field for those kids, so they become exactly the same psychopathic adults when they grow up. Or that those victims of wars can become bloodthirsty monsters who seek revenge. You create duality.
I don't follow you, I finally said. Of course, I feel sorry for those kids or those victims of the wars. Anybody in their right mind would feel the same way. How can I not choose sides? You just said I'm not compassionate enough, and now you're telling me to turn my back on those innocent people.
If you want to bring peace to earth and your heart, you cannot wish peace for one side, but hatred for the other. You should do your best to help those in need. But you also need to have mercy in your heart for those who lost themselves to their walls and send them your love instead of hatred.
He wasn't frustrated with my lack of understanding on the subject, but I was frustrated with his lack of understanding of human emotions. My father was no Hitler, but I don't think I could ever send him love after what he did to us, I stammered. He ruined my life, and he ruined my mom's life. Forgiving him was a betrayal to my mother, though she had never asked me to resent him. It was my way of showing how much I loved her, although I never heard her say one single negative word about my father. There were times I wanted to shake her to spill the bitterness about my father out of her, but she never spoke against him. She always kept her silence, even during her painful battle against cancer. The phone rang, so I got up to answer it in the kitchen. It was Anne. I think Jack is cheating on me. What? I have to repeat everything to you twice lately. I think Jack is cheating on me. She raised her voice irritably. Can you believe that? And I'm having breakfast with an alien in my apartment, was what I wanted to say, but instead, no, I can't believe that, I said. Although nothing could surprise me or sound unbelievable at the moment, I was simply trying to be supportive and rational. Anne, we just got back last night. How could you figure out such a damn thing within the last 10 hours? I looked at Azur across the room over the kitchen counter. Obviously, he was listening to my conversation with Anne. He looked relaxed. I wondered if he had special powers to listen to the other side of a conversation, and if betrayal would also be an issue on other planets. I felt guilty for not focusing on Anne for a second. Clueless to what I'd been thinking, Anne continued. I was kind of suspicious even before our trip, but I didn't want to believe it. Things between us weren't how they used to be. Last night, right after I arrived home, somebody called him, and he stayed on the phone for at least 20 minutes. He went outside to talk. He didn't want me to hear. Outside? So what? You've got a cat, a dog, and 2 kids in a small house. It was probably about business, and he needed quiet. He's always had late evening meetings. I was trying to be optimistic. I'm not finished yet. She raised her voice at me again. Okay, sorry, continue. I couldn't sleep all night, and I checked his phone. He spoke to someone named Brian. I took a deep breath. I really wanted the conversation to be over so I could go back to my conversation with Azur, which sounded much more interesting. I took another glance at him. He smiled back, and my heart warmed up. Getting lost in my thoughts, I must have missed some part of the conversation with Anne. When I heard her say, "A woman answered the phone," I came to the realization, hold on. I snapped at her in disappointment. Did you call the number on his phone? Sorry, the line was breaking up and I couldn't hear what you said before. I lied. Yes, I used my prepaid phone to call the number, the one I give to my mom when she visits here. A woman answered the phone, and whoever that Brian guy wasn't Brian, she said with an irritated edge to her voice. How did you even access Jack's phone? Doesn't it have a passcode? If he's doing such a thing, he must be smart enough to change the code on his phone. Oh, he hardly ever changes his code. He has the brain of a fish. If he changed it frequently, he'd probably forget it, so he keeps recycling the same codes over and over. Maybe you're being paranoid, Anne. She could be Brian's wife or girlfriend or even daughter. You made the call in the middle of the night. Anybody could have picked it up given the fact that Brian was probably asleep. I've checked the call history. Jack spoke to Brian many times over the last few weeks. Anne, I don't want to speculate on something we don't know anything about. I'm hoping you didn't try to confront him on this, right? No, I couldn't. And before you reach any conclusions, I think you two should discuss the issues in your marriage first, if any. You're right, she finally admitted in despair. You know what? Why don't you drop off the kids tonight and they can stay here overnight? You two go on a date and talk. This is what you need. As soon as I made the proposition and Anne considered it, my heart sank. I was glad I could help Anne, but I knew I had missed my chance to spend Saturday evening with Azur, even though I didn't know if he was planning to spend the evening with me. Also, the guilt of not mentioning Azur to Anne took over. She trusted me enough to leave her kids with me, and she wasn't aware that I was becoming involved with someone from another planet, an alien. I looked at Azur as soon as I hung up the phone, and I don't know if he read my thoughts, which were not unimaginable at this moment, or perhaps he guessed. He gave me a gentle smile.
I won't stay the evening. You'll have your hands full with the kids. You also need some time to sort out your thoughts.
A feeling of panic took over. When am I going to see you again? You're not leaving right away, are you? How absurd. I never believed in true love in my life. Everything seemed to be conditional, even the love from my parents. My father left us because we couldn't live up to his expectations. I know my mom loved me, probably as close as people come to unconditional love, but she would be upset with me if I couldn't comply with her expectations. She expected good grades, good boyfriends, good behaviors. Looking at Anne, how she treated her kids and her husband, everybody expected something of each other. It was the core of our existence. We always had to play by the rules. However, the man in my living room was different. He claimed that he knew everything about me. I wasn't proud of who I was or what I'd done in the past, but he seemed to accept me unconditionally. He came up with unbelievable explanations, yet I knew deep inside that he was telling me the truth, and I wasn't ready to let him go yet.
Don't worry, Lara. I'm not going anywhere as long as you want me around. We still have time until Anne drops off the kids. I'll be here tomorrow too, but I will give you your space. I don't want you to worry about me or anything else. Your friend needs you.
He smiled. It was a relief. Do you think her husband is cheating on her? I asked. He shrugged.
I don't know.
You know everything. How come you don't know this?
I only know the things that I'm allowed to know. It is none of my business to interfere in her life.
It's a terrible thing if she's right about Jack. Why do people have to cheat or stop loving each other? I was frustrated with Jack, but I was also frustrated with the rest of humanity.
You can't know what is right or wrong, and you shouldn't judge. If she is right, Jack might be doing her a favor. Maybe the experience she is gaining will be the lesson of her lifetime. It may start as a bad idea, but the result might be a happier life for both. Sometimes the universe works in a way you can't comprehend, but you have to have faith.
He went silent for a second. His gaze drifted off in contemplation, and then he continued, returning to me.
Going back to our original conversation, I've told you you're 6 billion years old. The same with Anne. I don't know exactly with her, but she must be around the same age, give or take a few 100 million years. So what she's experiencing in this lifetime is only a drop in the bucket. Human beings need to learn to let go. Your race spends so much time on mourning, cursing, condemning, instead of focusing on love and appreciation.
Blame the walls, I replied dismissively. He shook his head in disapproval, but couldn't hide his smile. No matter what you say, the very few years we do live here is my reality, I said in my defense. I might be 6 billion years old, but I can't see any relevance if I don't remember anything of those billions of years. And this applies to the rest of humanity, and to Anne. No matter how much you emphasize my age, all I remember is what I'm experiencing in this lifetime, on this earth. And trust me, it's not heaven down here. Are you watching what's been happening around the world? We kill each other for fun, and we have very little control over our lives. I have a hard time believing this reality is my creation. I have to spend a fortune if I want to eat something that isn't full of antibiotics or chemicals. It makes it impossible not to judge and let go or look at corruption as simply another experience in life. It's hard. and it hurts. This was not about Anne anymore. I was frustrated with the way he kept using analogies to explain everything effortlessly, but it wasn't easy to apply them to real life. He wasn't seeing it. I couldn't read any emotion on his face, maybe a little pity.
The earth, as you see it, is your creation, and it's nothing but energy. Trust me, your life is your creation. You've manifested it. You've attracted it with your energetic frequency, your fears, passions, and interests, and your thoughts. All of these create your energy field, which attracts and shapes what is around you. I'll keep repeating this to you until you get it. Of course, you alone aren't able to cause disasters, but the collective minds of humanity can and do because they all think like you. The majority of you create with those negative emotions you've just expressed. They feel victimized, and they think they have every right to blame others for their circumstances. But in fact, the frequency they're emitting is shaping everything around them, around you. You attract what you put out there. Your thoughts, your feelings, create a den in the universe that must be filled with a similar element, matching your frequency. You must learn to master your feelings towards your environment. Even with the best intentions, your negative reactions always create an adverse effect, because the universe can only match your energy field.
I need another lifetime to master my feelings, I said gloomily, remembering the consequences. If I failed, which seemed unavoidable, I had to incarnate on Earth again. Azur would lose his connection to me, and who knows how many more 1,000 years I would be stuck here.
I'm here to teach you, so you'll master it in this lifetime.
The passion in his eyes gave me a little strength. How? I asked. I believed in him, and I believed he was here to help me. But I had to believe in myself, and I didn't know how.
I'll teach you to change your thought patterns. You'll stop judging the end product of your and others' making. You'll understand there is no good or bad on planet Earth. It is just different ends of the same stick. What you eat is indeed full of hormones and pesticides, and is genetically engineered to the point that it is a joke. But on the other hand, have you thought that most of the world's population can only afford to have food because of the genetic enhancements, pesticides, and hormones? What is the difference between dying from war or dying from hunger? You can lobby all you want and even succeed against genetically engineered food. But how about people dying from hunger on the other side of the world because they can't find enough food to feed themselves? Because you kept lobbying to stop GE food production? How is that any different from any other kind of war?
What are you talking about? So I should stop caring about healthy food and not be concerned about how the food comes to my plate or what I'm eating? What you're saying doesn't make sense. I wondered to myself whether he was capable of losing his temper. How long could he tolerate my lack of understanding? Azur closed his eyes for a second and took a deep breath.
This is not what I'm saying. Remember our conversation? If you want peace in the world, you need to send your love to both sides, both the victims and the predators. You can't protect one while condemning the other, or else you'll create more violence in the world. If you want healthier food, try to pick healthy options as much as you can. You can even lobby, but do it with passion and love, not anger. You live in the third dimension, and dualities are felt heavily here.
What is a duality? I remembered he had mentioned it earlier. He looked down again to collect his thoughts.
You know creation is perfect.
He said, looking back at me. No, I didn't know. It didn't feel perfect to me. If it was, how could anybody explain the agony, the suffering that humanity has been going through? If we created our reality, why did we create it in the worst possible way? I didn't have to say anything. He must have read what I was thinking on my face.
Creation, from your point of view, from your third-dimensional point of view, might not be ideal. It may help if you think of it as dream state consciousness. You're dreaming of uncharted territories, obstacles that are difficult to overcome. Nevertheless, the dream is your creation, but the dreamer is in its pure existence and perfect. You're the maker of this illusion, and accept it or not, you're the dreamer. You're a perfect being like the rest of creation.
It was exhilarating for me to think I was perfect in anyone's view, and hearing it from a man who was beyond attractive and intelligent made my cheeks turn red. Of course, Azur would notice my blush. He noticed everything. I had to take our conversation in a different direction, so I wouldn't look like a high school girl drooling over a boy. How has this dream state anything to do with duality?
In the dream, Most believe a single God created everything, and it, meaning God, is everywhere and in everything. But their thought system is so convoluted they don't comprehend the ramifications. They think God is everywhere, but not in them. God is part of everything but them. And God is perfect, but its creations aren't because they never saw themselves as perfect beings in the dream state. So, the thought system in this state creates duality. Instead of seeing the world as a whole and complete in its existence, the dreamers sort everything into good or bad, black or white. They keep judging and putting ideas in different boxes. And eventually, they break wholeness into pieces to separate one end from another. You create duality. When you wish for justice, power, or love out of anger, judgment, fear, resentment, or envy, you create an opposite impact on the other side. It's similar to pulling an elastic string. You pull one end to yourself, and the other end becomes tight and tense. You end up either hurting others or your future endeavors.
So should I never wish for money or a better life or even love for myself? I felt stupid asking such a question. I suspected I didn't get his point. If I care for myself, I hurt others?
You do if you meet your needs only through your mind, not your heart. Your heart is a portal where you tap into the source of energy with unlimited power, and you bring new and fresh energies to your creation and the world. You don't have to tap into an existing pool of energy by ripping somebody else's. Creating through your heart is the only way you avoid duality and create beauty for all of humanity.
I wasn't comfortable with our conversation anymore. Maybe I didn't have enough room in my heart to wish anything through it. I had always relied on my logic, and I wouldn't be able to change myself overnight. Where are you staying? I changed the subject, but it dawned on me that this would start another discussion that would probably blow my mind again. I was right.
Are you sure you want to know?
He must have read my mind. No, I sighed. I don't know if I'm ready to find out. I sank into my chair, dropping my eyes. But until it's out, it'll be the elephant in the room. So yes, I need to know, I said. It was hard for me to maintain eye contact with him when I was uncomfortable. He kept staring at me, but I kept looking at the patterns on the plate in front of me.
What should I do so you can feel comfortable around me, Lara?
I don't know. It's not an everyday thing to meet someone who claims to be from another planet. Even if I ignore the fact that you're an alien, I met you only a week ago, and we've spent a mere few hours together. I don't know what to do. I've always had issues with any man in my life anyway, which you already know pretty well. And you've been bombarding me with a kind of information that I'm having a really tough time grasping. I continued, my voice trembling. Let's get this over with. Where are you staying? I repeated my question. He moved onto the chair next to me, pulled the chair even closer, and turned mine sideways to face him. I was stiff and didn't know how to react.
Look at me, Lara.
He said, lifting my chin. I felt like a little child.
I'm sorry you feel frustrated. It is my fault. I've rushed pushing so much information on you in a short time. I had promised myself not to do this. But there are so many things I want you to understand and remember, and this is not something I've ever done before either. I'm so excited to find you after all those centuries of searching. Finally, you're here.
His words gave me goosebumps. They were filled with passion and love, and they were meant for me. I couldn't comprehend. The look on my face gave him pause for a second.
Let's try something different. This may help you understand me better,
he said, and asked me to lean back in my chair and close my eyes.
It'll help you to relax and see things from a different perspective.
Paranoia swept over me as I remembered a novel I had once read. The lead character's memory was replaced with a completely different one. I didn't want to say anything implying my distrust toward him, but I couldn't help it. You're not going to alter my thoughts or my memories, are you? I opened my eyes to see reassurance in his eyes.
Have some faith in me, Lara. I wouldn't do such a thing. It would go against everything I believe in and everything I try to explain to you.
He hesitated for a second.
But I'm not saying it is not possible.
He smiled wickedly.
It is not difficult to do. Even humans do it to each other every day. They can't really alter memories, but they can push ideas to each other unconsciously. How many times have you and your friend thought of the same thing, but considered it a coincidence? In fact, you were simply picking up each other's thoughts.
His face became serious. He raised an eyebrow.
You're distracting me. Could you please close your eyes? I promise I won't alter your memories, but I'll help you remember one of your lives, the one with me. If you remember, it will help you become more comfortable around me.
He held my hands, our knees touching.
Please trust me and close your eyes.
He repeated himself. So I did as he directed, deciding I could trust him.
Take a deep breath.
He started, his voice was comforting.
Inhale deeply and exhale very slowly. Take another deep breath and exhale slowly. You need to relax and surrender. Trust me and trust your feelings.
Something happened. Although I felt him holding my hands, my surroundings changed. I was in a dream, but still aware of everything around me. I could hear him and feel his hands holding mine. I knew, physically, that I was in my living room, and yet I was in a different reality. I was a different person or being, not sure what it was.
Look at your body, your hands, your clothes.
He guided me. I wore a long dress made of sparkling silver fabric. The shiny, light, and thin material draped loosely over my body and arms. As I glanced down, I couldn't see my shoes, hidden beneath the flowing garment. When I observed my hands, they appeared white, almost translucent. My silver-white hair cascaded down to my chest, completing the ethereal look. "Do you see what I see?" I asked him, wondering.
Not entirely, but I'm also in your energy field, so I can feel it. I know where you are, but you need to tell me the details. It will help you focus better.
So I told him the details of my vision. "What am I?" I asked. "A vampire? I look so colorless. My skin is nearly transparent and flawless, like marble."
No, you're not a vampire. You've never been one.
"So vampires are real?" I was curious.
Lara, please focus. What else do you see around you?
He asked firmly. Gradually, the surroundings began to take shape after an initial blur. I found myself standing in an expansive space that resembled a warehouse. Shades of white dominated my vision. Towering shelves stretched high above, their tops blending seamlessly with the lofty ceiling. Intriguingly, intricate geometric symbols adorned the ceiling, evoking a sense of powerful energy emanating from this peculiar reality. "There are books everywhere," I spoke. "It must be a library of some sort. But the books are all the same. Same shape, same size, same color, or should I say colorless. There are no words or symbols, nothing on the books." I was puzzled. "But I know what I'm looking for," I added. "It's a strange feeling. It's like a computer download. The second I think of what I'm looking for, the information is downloaded to my mind, and I don't need to pick up the book physically. How convenient!" I giggled.
What kind of information are you looking for?
"I think I'll be traveling," I replied. I forced myself to concentrate on the knowledge that was downloaded on me. "Oh," I exclaimed, "it's about Earth, the blue planet. Everything there is about planet Earth."
Give me more details.
I wasn't sure how to explain it to him. The feeling I had received from the download was not well defined. It was easy to comprehend in that strange, translucent body. At least, that was the feeling I was getting, but I had a hard time translating it into words. I did my best to describe it to Azur. "The truth about the Earth is that it's different from the other planets I've lived on before." I paused for a second. "Or she had ever lived on." I continued. "I don't know what to call her." I frowned. Should I call her I, or should I call her she? I was part of her and resonated with her feelings and thoughts deeply, but I was also myself, sitting in the chair in my living room.
It is you. That is why you can feel her. Let's go back to the subject. Why do you think the Earth is different?
I focused on the form in my vision, and I tried to decipher the feelings I had in that body. "There are many reasons," I added. "The Earth holds many races. It's not about skin color, though. It's about other beings who originated on other planets. They're all incarnated on the Earth planet. They all have different missions, different purposes, but they're all here to learn. It makes Earth unique."
How was your experience with the other planets?
The other planets, even the planets I lived on in the third dimension before, have only one or two races. That's why there was more harmony and peace, because the inhabitants mostly had the same background, but this made the knowledge I gained from those planets limited. I'm ambitious and I want to learn more. I'm fascinated with the Earth because it has so much to offer. Despite the controversies and sufferings, it'll be like observing the entire universe all at once. I paused again. What a moron I must have been, I blurted. Azur laughed.
No, you were wise then.
I could feel the smile on his face.
What else do you feel?
Gosh, I think I'm distracted. She's fading away. I was getting upset.
No, you'll be fine. Clear your mind and focus. Why do you want to live on the Earth planet?
It was coming back to me. I started translating her feelings into words again. It's very challenging, and I want the challenge. Earth is the only planet that has the energy to wipe out all recollections from previous lives. The lifespan there is short, and you can't remember previous lives. Although the soul gets wiser, you can't use the knowledge unless you synchronize with your soul and really connect with it. It's not easy, and there's no similar planet anywhere else in the universe. I couldn't believe what I was saying, but feeling her and downloading her thoughts, I knew I was speaking the truth.
Look around. Is there anybody else besides you?
Suddenly, I became more aware of my surroundings. A man was standing next to me. There's someone beside me. I paused. I can't see clearly. He's blurry right now.
Keep talking. It will help you focus.
I explained what I was seeing. He looks tall, taller than me. He's all in white, but his dress doesn't sparkle. Azur was right. The more I explained, the better I could see. The man wasn't looking at me. He was lost in his thoughts. His skin was similar to mine. He looked like a beautiful marble statue, flawless, and his hair was short and silver white.
Look him in the eye.
I can't. He's not looking at me. I was disappointed. I wanted to see his face as well.
Make him look at you.
Azur demanded. I didn't know this experience could be interactive, but in my mind, I asked the marble man to look at me, and he did. He had a beautiful face. I was hoping he would be Azur, but it wasn't him. He had different features, still beautiful, but different. I wished I could see myself, wondering if I was as beautiful as he was.
Look him in the eye.
Azur repeated. I thought at first that his eyes were brown, but then they turned hazel and then blue. They keep changing colors, I told Azur. I was amazed.
I want you to look beyond the colors.
I looked at the man more carefully, and I felt a window was opening through his eyes, letting me see his soul. Everything was about the feeling, but I knew at that moment that he was Azur. He's you, I smiled. Seeing him there made me happy.
You need to tune into his feelings.
He didn't need to tell me that. The moment I saw the opening in his eyes, I tuned into his thoughts and his feelings. He and I were one and complete in that reality. He was full of emotions, mixed emotions. He was proud that I had made up my mind to reincarnate on the Earth planet. But at the same time, he was worried. His love toward me was beyond my understanding. Infinity is the only word that would describe it. But it was mutual. I loved him as much as he loved me. You loved me so much, and you worried about me, I whispered. The feelings were dense and unbearable for me. I had to open my eyes. If I'd stayed in that energy any longer, I was going to pass out, but I couldn't open them. My eyelids were stuck. Please make me come back, I pleaded.
I'll count down from 10 to 1. By the time I reach 1, you'll be fully awake, and your consciousness will be fully back in your body.
He instructed me in a firm tone. Stay tuned for Chapter 5 and more incredible artwork. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe to our channel.